Hey there, and welcome to the Jeffrey Van Dyke Show, a podcast for paradigm changers. Each week I speak with another influential leader who's changing the conversation for their audience, their industry, and this world. I am so glad you're here. Welcome to the show. Hello, and welcome to the Jeffrey Van Dyke Show. We have with us my dear friend, someone I love and adore, Matthew Tenzin. Hey, Matthew.
Hi, Jeffrey.
So glad to have you here. So let me just introduce you and we'll dive in. So Matthew is an interesting character. He's a former Buddhist monk who is now an interior designer. He's always been attuned to aesthetics and energetics of spaces and has a lifelong love for the intersection of spirituality and creativity. Since 2012, he's been principal designer at Joe McGuire Design, overseeing residential interior design projects in Aspen, Boulder, and lots of other places in the country. And then in 2017, he founded True Home, a holistic design consultancy focused on energetics, wellness, and sustainability. Drawing on decades of training in meditation, energetic work, and shamanic healing, the True Home process is a holistic approach to interior design that helps people clear their home's energy, activate their personal vision, and transform their home into a power place. So, Matthew, welcome. I want to start right there. Turn their home into a power place. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think that can mean a lot of different things to people, and I like that it's a little bit open. For me, that arises from my training in the shamanic tradition. So in the shamanic tradition, there's a really specific understanding of what a power place is, and it's something that I love to help guide people to the experience of. And so there's the shamanic understanding, which I can say a little bit about, but ultimately what I'm interested in is helping people create a home that fully empowers them, like fully empowers their vision, their purpose, their mission in life, nurtures them, supports them, has all the elements required for them to feel balanced, rested, whole, healthy, and ultimately in connection with the whole, with nature, to live in harmony with nature and a feeling of connection to this planet that we're on. And so I think that's really the big vision of what a power place is to me. In the shamanic tradition, it's a guided visioning process that I take people through to find their power place in a visionary space. It's sort of in the unseen world or energetic world in the shamanic tradition where we find our power place. And it can look like, a beautiful beach and, all tropical plants and waterfalls for some people. For some people, it's some special place in the mountains. It can be some place that we've been to on this planet, or it can be completely in another world or on another planet. It's however one's imagination leads one, and then in going to that place, we can start to interact with and experience what it's like to be deeply nurtured and restored and healed and supported and guided and inspired and just immersed in beauty. And that's what ultimately I feel all humans have the potential to experience here on planet Earth.
Mm-hmm.
I think this ultimately is our power place as human beings. This is the Garden of Eden, potentially. It has that potential, and that we're here as caretakers and co-creators, tenders of the garden, ultimately, as humans. But we've just forgotten that, or not been told that. It's an ancient myth, but we've forgotten that that's actually our role. And so we have the ability to begin to experience that again in our home through energetic work, through aesthetic work, visionary work, but also through connection to nature. And that's something that I think we can do in our home wherever we are, whether it's an apartment in a high rise or somewhere deep in the woods. We are nature. We are infinitely always connected to nature. And so, so bringing that sense of connection into our lives on a daily basis and having an environment that reflects that and supports that and reminds us of that, reminds us of our role as stewards. We naturally want to take care of nature and the planet because we're not separate from it.
There's a lot there. Thank you.
Yes.
You know, the first thing I want to say is, in all transparency for everybody listening, Matthew and I have worked together on developing some of this, and he's taken a long way since we worked together. But this power place thing, when you talk about the power place, what occurs to me is that we all know somewhere inside of us what a power place is for us. We might not logically know, we might not cognitively know, we might not experience it often or maybe ever. But when you say, oh, I guide people into this place, and it can be this, that, or the other thing, but ultimately it's this place where you feel deeply connected, deeply nurtured, etc. You know, I have another a friend of mine, Martin Root, who runs this thing called Project Heaven on Earth. And you know, what he says is so like the phenomenon he's discovered is wherever he goes in the world, whether he's talking with somebody with any religious background, whatever it is, or none at all, when you ask someone what heaven on earth is to them, everyone has an answer. Mm-hmm. And so he says, we know intuitively what heaven on earth is, right? And it sounds similar to me in that, like, there is something inside of us that knows what a power place is, where our soul is fully activated. Yes. And for everybody listening, this is an interior designer, right? Talking about this. So I want to remind, like, the thing that I love is so often in spiritual traditions, that kind of thing might be done in a visioning process, on a retreat, or whatever it is, but then we come home. Right? We leave the retreat setting, we leave the mountaintop, we come home, and most of us, I think, have a different experience. We don't walk into a power place. What do you think the consequences of that are for us collectively?
Well, I mean, it's really devastating, I think, because there's a reason for that. I think it arises from our misconception of being separate from nature. And so that has led to the types of spaces that we create and we build. The commodification of land and homes and stuff. And because we don't experience our wholeness, oneness with nature and with life and with spirit, there's this endless hole that we're trying to fill materially. And that's reflected throughout our culture and has led to the environmental crisis that we're in. But it also is reflected in our homes, that we build these boxes that are just plopped on land, and there's big fences and hedges around, and it's, we go, from our home into the garage, directly into the car, into the office. We're going from one compartment to the next, rarely actually fully encountering nature and each other and other animals and creatures and plants and the stuff that we're made of and that we depend upon for our life. And so, the types of homes and structures that we've built have created this profound sense of alienation. That's actually part of, that's really part of the problem environmentally, because the home building industry is a huge source of CO2 and biodiversity loss, and like the way that we build in this world is, I read it's like, buildings are about 40% of the CO2 emission. And so it's not, there are a lot of people looking at this from a sustainability point of view, which is a part of what true home is about. It's about wellness, it's about sustainability and energetics. But for me, we can't really crack the sustainability problem if we're just looking at we're looking at it from a physical point of view. We're just trying to solve it scientifically or materially, rather than feeling and understanding our oneness, our wholeness with nature. We have to approach this spiritually at some point, because as soon as we know that we're one with nature, how can we destroy it? And when we experience that in our home and in the home building process or the home purchasing process, or redesigning, it's painful to select those materials that we know are destroying some forest somewhere, or some mountaintop, or things that are rare but incredibly beautiful. But it's painful, actually. We feel that, and when there are other equally amazing, beautiful options out there, and so in terms of sustainability in the building process, once we, and I guide people into an experience of that wholeness, that what is really, I feel, our true home, that state of wholeness. That's an interior, but not just interior, it's inner and outer wholeness. And from that experience, it's so much easier to make decisions that are good for the planet. And in fact, we have incredible creative visions that, around how to solve this problem or how to make it even better. It's not just about sustaining, it's about making it even better, and that's what I love about bringing vision from a higher place into the design process. There's so many win-win-wins. That's one of the things about messages from spirit, is that it's a win-win-win for everybody. And when people receive those visions, it's like a win for everyone in the family, and for the neighbors, and for the community, and for the earth, and it's just awesome.
Yeah.
And so that's what we have lost. We've lost a sense of that potential, and so it's led to this, this alienation, these homes that kind of can zap us or drain us, and we don't even realize it. We don't sleep, we don't eat well. So many of the ways that homes are designed are not designed for healthy choices and healthy habits. They are not using healthy materials. These materials can be off-gassing, but then also energetically, if there are just basic energetic imbalances with a home or a piece of property, no matter how you design it and decorate it, it's not going to feel right, and it can be deeply draining rather than empowering. And so that's why the energetic piece is something that is, I feel, so essential to bring into the discussion in the interior design and home building world. And that can, that I want to talk more about that at some point, what that means to me. But to me, that's kind of really one of the missing pieces.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you that, gosh, if we approach sustainability by just simply saying, oh, oops, we've been screwing over the planet and we need to fix it, without addressing why do we build this way, from a spiritual perspective, and as it relates to that structural perspective of what is home.
Yes.
Right. What is home? And if we, as you say, if we realize we are nature, then our relationship to nature and other people and everything changes, and that by necessity would change how we think about and approach home design, building, decorating, everything.
Yeah.
I want to learn a little bit about your history, because what I find fascinating with innovators is that we usually are peanut butter and jelly type folks, right? Or chocolate and peanut butter, or Nutella and right. But we put different things together that maybe haven't come together before in the way that we're able to put them together. And I think that's largely how innovation works. So tell me a little bit about like where you grew up, and then I want to get into your experience being a monk, and then we'll move into your experience being an interior designer, and then we'll see how the elements started to come together. But tell us just a little bit about like where you grew up, what was life like, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so I live in Boulder, Colorado, part of the time, and in Aspen part of the time. My husband and I have our design firm together, and we kind of go back and forth because we have clients in both places. And but I grew up in Colorado Springs, which is a few hours from here. I'm currently in Boulder, and Colorado Springs is known for being a pretty conservative, very evangelical Christian place. Certainly not all, but
Yep.
leans that way. And my family, my parents were evangelical Christians. My father was a missionary before, he was a monk, a Catholic monk, and then he became a missionary, when he decided not to be a monk anymore and to get married. And so, so I grew up in a very religious family, and that they were religious, but also, there was an essence of real spirituality within my parents, thankfully, because when I was, a teenager and starting to realize that I was gay, when the church was saying, that's absolutely not a good thing, you're going to go to hell, you have to pray to change, etc. Those are the messages I was getting from the church. When I finally came out to my parents, while it was, surprise and difficult, like it was, they immediately said, we're so glad you could tell us. And they were totally on board with loving and supporting me and just doing everything they could for me. I mean, it's been amazing. So that said, it was sort of a mixed environment, but that environment growing up in a very sort of spiritual and religious household was an interesting combo for me, because I was always drawn to spirituality. I have a deep impulse towards meaning. I've always wanted to understand why, why are we here, and what's the meaning of doing anything? And I've always been also a very creative person. I was always, always making art, always drawing houses that I wanted to live in. And, and it's like, I just had this incredible creative urge. And, within sort of religious spiritual traditions, creativity is only supported to a point. There's a lot of structure, and it's kind of, you want to keep it within certain reigns.
Color inside these boxes, please.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So, after coming out, I kind of thought, I'm a free spirit. I'm not a religious person. I'm going to connect with spirit in whatever that is, just in my own way. And I went on a lot of adventures, traveling and making art and was going towards being a fine artist. And then I was still craving the meaning. I thought, what's the meaning of making anything or painting anything or drawing it? What is the meaning of this? Like, how do I wanted to heal. I wanted to communicate something helpful or healing to others. And I didn't know how to do that through art. I tried, but I felt like I have to kind of look at, how do I heal myself first? And so I got into meditation, and I started meditating. This is when I was living in Chicago, and I found it really helpful. And then within a few months was invited to a talk by the Dalai Lama. A friend invited me to go, and that was really a pivot point, because I didn't know who he was at the time. This was in the mid 90s. And so I was just absolutely stunned.
I can see it on your face, even as you say that.
Just stunned. It was like, I want what he's having, whatever it is, like what is he doing? Like this, it was inner. I mean, I was just crying for no reason, just seeing him. I just felt the energy of his compassion and his love and his words, and had a brief encounter with him afterwards, just coming out the door of the stage. And I just, he looked me in the eyes and did this. And I was just like, who is this? And so, so that I thought, oh my gosh, I think I'm going to become a Buddhist, which was the weirdest thought. Like me, I didn't think I would ever identify with any religion anymore, anytime. And so, but I was like, there's something here I have to know. So I met one of his students, who's a Tibetan Lama, an old Tibetan Lama who who I studied with for quite a few years here in the States. And, he helped me kind of mentor me in meditation and help me prepare to become a monk,
Yeah.
because being around the monks, it was interesting. My first experience being around a group of monks, shortly after seeing the Dalai Lama, I was at this group of monks. I volunteered to help them with their ritual that they were doing. And I showed up, and just seeing them, I walked in the door and saw these monks, and I just felt this message. I mean, it was this word, I heard it, home,
Huh.
home. And it was so stunning to me and so emotional to me that I had to turn around and go sit in the back of the church where this was, and I just cried, because I thought, what was that? What is it? Home? But it was a feeling of home, and I just knew, okay, there's something here. There's
Yeah.
something here. Now, when I look back on it, it's so interesting that it was the word home,
Yeah.
because doing this work, true home. And in my time as a monk, I spent a number of years in retreat, and had experiences of that sense of just home, true home. Like, yeah.
Where were you? So you spent like a few years in silence.
Yeah, I was a monk for 5.5 years, and 3 years of that was in retreat. There was a 2.5 year silent retreat. It's like solitary retreat.
Oh my
Um,
God. Let's just pause there for a minute, because I remember when the first time I was invited to a 7-day silent retreat, and I was freaked out. I mean, I went and it was great, but the idea of not talking for 7 whole days. And when you say, oh yeah, 2.5 year solitary silent retreat, that's a big deal.
hmm.
I mean, like, Matthew, you weren't raised in that tradition. You're raised in the West, right? Raised in a noisy world.
Yeah.
Uh, and to go, like, do all, like, were you required to do that as a monk? Was that voluntary?
It was sort of like winning the lottery as a monk. For a lot of monks, it's sort of like, um, you're really fortunate if you get to do long-term solitary meditation retreat, because it takes a lot of just the right conditions and your teacher feeling that you're ready, and telling you to do this. And so it was definitely a goal of mine all along, because the great monks, yogis, saints in the Buddhist tradition, they all, their epiphanies, their awakenings, their turning points happened in solitary meditation retreat. I
Yeah.
mean, Buddha awakened sitting under a tree for 7 years. So, and there's a long history of these tales of, and my teachers, my main teacher, Lama Zopa, I mean, he meditated in a cave for many, many years. And, when I lived with him for a year before going into retreat, I mean, he's awake day and night. He doesn't sleep. And so, because he meditated so long, and so, to a point where he past the need to sleep anymore, because he's, when asked about that, he said, the delusions, the negative states of mind are what zap our energy and make us tired, and we have to sleep in order to release those. But
So where were you in retreat?
in Big Sur,
In California.
California. Yeah. So someone donated a little remote piece of land, a ranch, a really remote little ranch in Big Sur that you can't really even get to year round. It's a 4-wheel drive road, and then it goes through rivers, and when the rivers are high, you can't drive in and out, or the road washes out. So it's very remote. But someone donated that land to him, and he turned it into a little place for solitary meditation retreat. There were 7 other, 5 to 7 other monks and nuns in little cabins around this valley, this beautiful, oh my gosh, the most beautiful sacred valley. Yeah.
I mean, if you're gonna be solitary in nature. Being in Big Sur is not a bad place to do it.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
there were so many days when I woke up and really, literally felt like I won the lottery.
Yeah.
I mean, there were really hard days too. I mean, there were definitely, because stuff comes up. You deal with stuff. You have to face yourself. You can't
Yeah.
be there and not face yourself. But I would say the majority of the time, I felt like, how do I get to be here? This is incredible. It was like the most incredible gift to not, there's no news, no email, no cell phones, no, I mean, I would get mail once a month, like, and there were times when I didn't, they wouldn't bring any mail because I was in really focused retreat for, sometimes 7 or 8 months at a time, and where I wouldn't see another human being. And so I would only get like really emergency type communications, handwritten. And so, yeah, but to not be processing the world and the news and the events, and just to be focused on what's right in the present moment.
Mm.
And it's so beautiful and so sacred. It's so sacred.
Even as you're talking about it, like I feel a sense of peace, and it feels like that home
Yes.
feeling. I start to feel that in my heart.
Mm.
Uh, I'd love for you to share the story of when you really started to experience uh, energetic beings, or something that might fall into that category.
Yeah, my ability to kind of be more consciously aware of energy really started by going to India. It started, as I started meditating, and then when I went to India with my teacher for the first time, and went to Bodh Gaya, where the Buddha sat under the tree. I mean, the Bodhi tree is still there. It's a descendant of the tree in the spot where the Buddha actually sat, and there's a big stupa, monument there. Thousands of people, or hundreds or thousands, depending on the day, all around. It's very crowded and hot and noisy, and there's ox carts and bells and horns, going around, but this garden that's walled off, and you go to this spot. It's like it's the ultimate Buddhist holy place or pilgrimage spot.
Yeah.
And the first time I went there, at this point, I'd been meditating for about, I think, 6 or 7 years. And so I was very familiar on a daily basis. So I was very familiar with what my mind is like, and like how to work with my mind, and how most of the time it's very busy and there's a little bit moments of calm, and then the busyness comes back. But then I went to Bodh Gaya, to the Bodhi tree, and kind of jostling through people to kind of get in there and to sit down on the stone pavers under this tree. And the minute I sat down and closed my eyes, pure peace, like, whew, no thoughts.
Yeah.
Even though the smells and the noise and the dirt and the dust and people bumping me, and
Such concentrated energy.
it was just, and I wasn't doing it. It was not like, I knew that was not me. That was not my normal meditation. That was not my mind. That was the energy of this place that just invited me, just drew me completely into that state of peace. And that was like and then I would go there every day, and I would see what it was like to go back to the monastery, and different spots in the monastery, or different places in, and in India, there are places with pretty intense and imbalanced energy and kind of crazy energy. But then to go back to the stupa and go under the Bodhi tree, and that energy was there every time. It wasn't me. And so that was my first real aha around the power of place. Talk about a power place, of a place to hold really beautiful, powerful, positive energy that affects anyone who comes within that sphere, whether they're fully aware of it or not. And I think our homes can, the energetic work is not just about clearing negative or imbalanced energy. It's about blessing. It's empowering. Like, how do you bring beautiful and hold beautiful, powerful, positive energy? There's some homes you walk into and you feel the love. Like, you walk in the door and it's like, oh my gosh, this family or this person, like, they are who are they? Like they're like it's just radiant. You can feel the love in a home, and also the intention in a
Yeah.
space. And so anyway, that was really my first experience. But later in retreat, I had some encounters with spirits, very very regular, reoccurring. There were practices that my teacher gave me to do. In the Buddhist tradition, you don't just go meditate somewhere, and you have to be very intentional about where you go. The place has to have just the right supportive energy for meditation, in terms of a balance of the natural elements. And then you have to ask permission to be
Hmm.
there. You have to tune in, because there's a ancient history. Any spot on this planet has thousands, millions of years of history before we show up there.
Yeah.
And there's a whole lot going on there that we're completely clueless about.
Yeah.
And we think, as humans, we can just barge in and plop down or do whatever we want, or buy a property and like, oh, this is mine now, I'm going to bulldoze it, or whatever. And that's so different from the Buddhist point of view. Whereas if you're going to meditate and experience a sense of home and ease and comfort and feeling welcomed and supported and nurtured, you have to find the right place and tune in and ask, can I be here? Is it okay? Hello,
Hmm.
and you make offerings.
Yeah.
You bring offerings to the spirit, the nature spirits, the spirits of the land, and the ancestral guardians of that land, and you say, I come in peace. I want to live in harmony. I want to live in balance. I want to bring something positive to this place. I want to I don't want to just take from it, or bring negativity. Like I want to be with you. Can I be here?
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you don't do that, all sorts of stuff. For one, it's really hard to meditate, and you think it's your own mind, but it's just there are a lot of energies. If the energies aren't welcoming you and they're wanting you, if you're kind of an imbalanced force in their world, they're trying to
Right.
spit you out. We were great here before you came,
Right.
so let's. So basically there are practices for making daily, it's just a part of the daily meditation practice, because you're all day you're meditating different sessions, but at the end of the day you make a little offering, ring a bell, pour the tea. It's a very traditional practice that meditators do in retreat to pay attention to the local spirits, the nature spirits, and the guardians of the place, and to say thank you for letting me be here, and thank you for supporting me in my meditation. It's just kind of like you might bring something to your neighbors every now and then, or you do things for the people around you to kind of help create that good feeling, and
My neighbor, it's a bottle of Chardonnay, but
yeah, exactly. You find out what they like.
Yeah.
And then you kind of every now and then you give them something of what they like, and that's it's just basic. And so you find out what these spirits like, and then you offer that. So the native, indigenous traditions all around the world know this. This is absolutely essential. Before building, before doing anything on a piece of land, offerings are made. You tune into what's going on there. You ask permission. And if there isn't immediate permission, then there's a dialogue and a discussion. Well, what do you need, and what can I do for you, and how can I improve things for you? So that's a win-win. And so anyway, that I at this point I didn't know that, so I'm doing every night, ringing the bell, pouring the tea after a whole day of meditation. It's like 10 hours a day of meditation, exhausted at the end of the day. And some days just dealing with my own stuff and just like, oh, why am I here? And so I just doing this chant in Tibetan. I have the translation of it, but I'm reciting it in Tibetan. So it just feels like this ritual that I didn't really totally believe. It felt superstitious to me. And so one evening I thought, I am exhausted. I've done enough today. My teacher's not here, so I'm skipping this ritual,
Going to
so,
bed.
yeah, I'm like, okay, I'm going to bed. And so did that night. Next day, full day, gets to the end of the day, and I'm like, hey, I skipped it last night. I maybe don't need to do this anymore. So I skipped the ritual again, go to bed, but I hadn't fallen asleep yet. I'm just laying down. I'm in this cabin in remote woods, and then I hear these footsteps on the wood floor. It's this old cabin with a metal tin roof, and thump, 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 coming across the floor towards my little mat on the floor. And I was terrified because, I mean, we're so far away from any, there's nobody out there. There should be nobody walking into my cabin in the middle of the night. And then immediately it was on top of me, this energy. And it said, "Where's my song?" Uh-huh. and I just, like, I screamed, and I was just like, ah! And I thought of my teacher, which was kind of my, my teacher, sort of my protector, like, Mama Zopa, help me. But, and it just, it went away. But it was like, whoa, what was that? That was intense. It was really scary. But where's my song? And then, so I went to sleep, but then the next day I thought about it, and I'm like, oh, the song, the chant that I was supposed to be doing every night to the local protector. And so I did it the next night, and I thought, okay, if you're here, because if we're communicating, give me a sign. Like, I want to know that was you, And so I did the ritual very exuberantly this time.
Here's my song.
Like, here you go.
Yeah.
And it's like, thank you to the local protectors for letting me be here. And it's pouring the tea and ringing the bell, and then right when I got to that line of thanking them, I was like, is that you? Are you here? And I heard this loud crash, just outside the meditation room in the cabin, and a whole bunch of stuff had just been toppled over in the next room. And so I thought, well, okay, we're communicating now. At least we're communicating.
Yeah.
And I know what you like. You like me to pour the tea and ring the bell and thank you and, sing the song.
Yeah.
So great. So I did not miss that.
Yeah.
But it was also a lot more meaningful to me because I knew I had it. I knew we were.
It was a relationship.
It was a relationship, and I actually began to experience this sense of support in my meditation and support in, and so that was one example. There were so many others, over the course of a number of years, because there are all sorts of different types of energies and spirits on the land, including the indigenous people that had lived there, the Esselen Indians on the coast in Big Sur. That was one of their wintering grounds. And so, coming across their sacred places when I would wander in the woods, and, that was, again, a total aha. I mean, this beautiful meadow, and there's this beautiful stone in the middle of the meadow, large flat stone. And I was just so drawn to it. And I go over to it, and there's a mortise and pestle in the like a hole in the stone, and a pestle there. And they used to gather the acorns, and they would grind their meal, but the pestle was still there. And I just thought, wow, and I just was curious and wanted to pick it up. And the minute I picked it up, I was like, the jolt of energy from that pestle was so clear that was not for me to touch. That was in the positioning of it and the whole thing. It was probably the center of their little village, and it was probably a ceremonial spot.
Mm-hmm.
And so, anyway, but these days we come across stuff like that and like, beautiful meadow. Oh, this is the most perfect spot. Let's put my house right here.
Right.
Get rid of this boulder. Oh, let's move that over there. And and I get called. I've had a number of clients in that almost exact situation, who they feel like their project is cursed. Like, years of trying to get permits and obstacles. In this one case, the bulldozer tipped over and almost killed somebody, and people were getting injured on the job site. And the owner, a very wealthy person who was trying to build this huge house in a beautiful sacred place, was like, I feel like this project is cursed. I don't know. I don't know what to do.
What's wrong? Yeah.
And in talking, through the shamanic tradition, I learned how to mediate with the spirits, and how to engage with them, dialogue, and arrange agreements. Like, they wanted to know that he was going to actually be aware of the sacredness of the place where he was building that house,
Mm-hmm.
and that there was some commitment on his part to actually take care of the land, take care of the earth, to honor the ancestors, honor what had been there. And even just agreeing to, like, an occasional ritual, an occasional just offering of smoke and remembering what had been there in that case.
Yeah.
And just that was enough for the project to be able to continue so far with no more obstacles. It's great. And it was actually really meaningful for the client because he loves that, like, oh wow, this is actually it is a very special, beautiful spot. I want to take care of it. Like I want to be a part of the energetics and the stewardship of this place.
Here's what I get as I hear you talking about it. It's like realizing that the land is alive.
Yes.
Like, oh, this is a living thing that I'm going to share space with, that
Yes.
I'm going to interact with, not just some dirt that I'm going to plop a house on.
Right. Yeah.
Uh,
It's the earth consciousness. That is what it is, that we're one with naturally. And we all have the ability to feel this. It's not just me, the more that we meditate or do yoga, I find that people who meditate and do yoga start to naturally begin to sense energy,
mhm,
which makes sense because you're more mindful of your body. And we
right.
sense energy through our body, and
Yeah.
we know what our body normally feels like. And then all of a sudden, if or what our mind feels like, what our emotions are typically doing. And then if we walk into a space and we're full of anxiety or, despair, or it just feels heavy, or we feel like we should not be in there, because of, meditation making us aware of our body, and yoga as well, we start to experience that. And
Yeah.
so anyway, everyone can sense this, and then it's a matter of, learning how to work with it, and calling in someone to help support. But then also really, the true home process, the last step of it is the caretaking, which is really the stewardship. Like once you create this power place, how do you steward it and take care of it energetically
Yeah.
as well as materially?
Let's get into the true home process, because I remember when we were working together and I was like, what's wrong with the design industry?
Yeah.
And you just busted out with, they have the whole thing upside down. They start with walls and windows, then get to beautification,
Yeah.
maybe get to, symbol, and maybe get to the energetics with a little feng shui. But never get into the place you were talking about of building a power place.
Yeah.
Right. And this kind of like, if you think about a food pyramid, it's like, hey, the pyramid's upside down. It's all wrong. So
Exactly. Yeah.
share with us just a little bit about, because here's what I want folks to recognize. Matthew, you just shared a snippet of your deep experience as a monk, and your whole journey in spirituality and shamanism and everything you've studied. And then you met Joe.
Yeah.
Right. Your partner,
Yeah.
your husband, and Joe was already an interior designer.
Right.
Right. And, so Joe McGuire Design is it's high end, beautiful design, high end clientele. You've had your work in Lux Magazine and other places. And you became a principal designer because you started working in his business and just had a knack for it. Like, how did that occur?
Yeah. When I look back at it now, I've always been designing spaces.
Right.
Even when I was a monk, they would give me a retreat cabin, and I would immediately go, oh no, like I can't sit in here unless some stuff changes. And usually it was just like getting almost everything out of there, putting only back in what really needed to be there. And, it was about the harmony and balance and beauty of the space, in a very simple way. But I've always been doing that. And even as a kid thought, oh, I want to be an interior designer. And so, I think it kind of makes sense now, but it's so funny that, like right after, deciding to leave the monkhood, which was really a decision about integration. I wanted to, after this experience of the earth consciousness, the intelligence, the beauty, the profound, miraculous beauty of the web of life that we're all a part of, and seeing what we're doing to it, like the way we're just harming, it's like sawing our arms off. I mean, it's the most tragic thing that we're doing just from this mistaken conception of separation,
Mm-hmm.
alienation and fear that results from that, and greed and consumption. It's like, it's so, I wanted to do something to try to communicate that and invite people into that experience. And I've always been so creative, just that creative energy. And I thought, there's something I can do. I know I can come up with some way, and it can't just be religious. I'm not interested in more religion. People don't need more religion. There's enough great religions, but
Uh-huh.
they need the essence, they
Yeah.
need the spirit, they need the experience, because it's not about beliefs. When you experience that oneness with our true nature, with what we are, it's something we all already have, everything we need. And so we don't have to believe anything.
Yeah.
Once you experience that, it's like, oh, okay,
It is. It is.
Yeah, and so I wanted to do something creative to kind of invite people into that for the sake of the planet. It felt urgent, and then I met Joe. I asked my teacher when I was leaving the monkhood. I said, I want to meet a spiritual soulmate. I don't want to. Been celibate for all these years. I don't feel like I need to be celibate anymore.
Right.
But I don't just want to date people. I want to meet like my spiritual soulmate. And how do I do that? So he gave me certain prayer to do to certain Buddhist deity Tara, to pray to help for her to help me meet my soulmate. It worked within a couple months. I was sitting next to Joe just randomly at not so randomly, but synchronistically, at a talk by the Dalai Lama. I went to see the Dalai Lama speak in Aspen, and we were both sitting in the back row, just one seat apart. And I felt his beautiful energy before I even saw him. I thought, oh, I was meditating. There's someone with really great energy, like one seat over. Yeah. So, and he was, an interior designer, and he had lived in India at the Dalai Lama's monastery and taught English and is a meditator. And so, and he's done the shamanic training now. We both did a deep kind of 3-year training with, shamanic teachers to really understand this energetic work more fully. And so we're both on the same page with all of that. I've been sort of spearheading the energetic side because, running this interior design business, high-end interior design business, Joe McGuire Design, he's sort of the face of the company. And,
Yep.
But we've always been working, for the last 9 years, been working just total hand in hand on our projects. And, but then gradually, it was so cool to learn and see the change, the shift in our clients before and after. Like, it's not just a new home, a new space. They are like new people, they energetically are so different when they're in a space that really reflects and nurtures and supports them. It's like, and so we've always seen our design work as a healing art, not just,
Mm-hmm.
design. It's not just about the stuff. But the energetic work and really the clarification around true home and the true home process, and the work that I did with you and helping like really distill, the essence and the messaging around that, and how to kind of gradually kind of unfold that and bring that into our work. That's been really a game changer for us because we're doing our work more meaningfully. We feel like there's true purpose in what we're doing. There's unlimited potential for it, really. And our clients really love it, really want it. Not all of our, like I'd say, more than half of our clients at this point are interested in doing the true home process. It's sort of an added deeper layer to our normal interior design process. Increasingly, people are knowing about that, hearing about that, wanting that, and definitely like wanting that to be a part of their process. But we still do projects where people, that's not their thing.
Yep.
We just know we're going to change the energy of their space through everything that we do automatically,
Yeah.
And they're going to love it, whether, we don't have to go into it as consciously or intentionally.
Right. Yeah. Right. So bring us through what the true home process is, like the 5 different aspects or stages of it. And then I want to see what your vision is for the industry.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. So at this point, I talk about the 5 levels of home, and then there are 4 steps in the true home process. And the 5 levels are what you referenced earlier that I noticed in the design industry after a few years of working with Joe and just seeing how, we do this backwards. We start with the functional, just getting the roof over our heads, this everything working. Then we move to like making it beautiful, the aesthetic, and then we move to the symbolic occasionally at the very end, or some designers are more intentional about bringing that through. The symbolic to me is like, it's the meaningful aspect of our space. It's where we're looking at, what does this house really mean to you? And the family photos and the mementos that are the pieces that are really important to you. A lot of times it's looking backwards in design. It's looking at the past, whereas in true home, the symbolic is about who are you really? Who's your true self? And where are you going? What's your vision? Like the more that we can reflect that in a space, then the space really becomes like a living vision board.
Yeah.
It's like a mandala. The Buddhist deity lives in their sacred abode at the mandala, which is it's a residence. It's a divine palace, and everything has a symbol of what their qualities are and what they're manifesting in the world out of compassion and service towards others. And so we have the opportunity to create really our own sacred mandala out of our home. And I've seen the power of that when, you only you could start with just a little altar, having an altar and placing objects that are sacred and that reflect, this is who I really am, and this is who I want to be, where I'm going, what I want to create in my life. Just doing that in one part of our home can change the energy of the home significantly and can change our lives. But the more that we bring through the true home process, it's like your whole home can become like your altar in a way. Everything is tended to in a sacred way, potentially with intention and vision. And so then unbelievably miraculous things can happen because it's like a generator. The home becomes a generator, a manifester of the vision that we've got for the world. And so anyway, that's the symbolic level. The energetic, which most people rarely get to, is like actually tending to the energy of the space. And then the spiritual is like, that's your highest intention, vision, purpose. And that's where we have to start. That was the epiphany for me. It was like, we got to start there. And that's why we start there with our clients, guiding them into that experience of what does this home and this land really mean to you? Where are you going in your life? What are you creating together? Often it's a couple and they maybe have not even talked about this. And what are the essential elements? And it's a guided visionary process. So a lot of times they receive and see things that are beyond their rational planning mind.
Right.
That may have been looking at the house in terms of its real estate value or resale value or, just the functional. But when they get their higher purpose together, or if it's one person, singular, then that filters through all the other stages in an incredible way. There's then we know exactly how you can immediately see what energy isn't harmonious with that vision, that we clear that or balance that, and then we bring in whatever energy is supportive of the manifestation of that vision, and we anchor that with symbols and with energetic grids and with the elements, the natural elements that need to anchor that, and then that filters into the aesthetics. It's like, well, of course we're going to use this color because in this room, this is my this room is my meditation room, and in my power place, it's all green, it's in the forest. And, I've done murals and, things that like bring people totally into that power place. And so, so that can inform the aesthetics and just different elements that are used around the house that really, vibe with that higher vision. And then, lastly, the functional, if we start with the vision, the functional could be so out of the box, so different than what the normal architect or builder would probably draw or plan.
Example.
Well, like, for one client, they're like a major yoga practitioner, and their yoga space is essential, and it's the heart of the home. And it's not, like, it can't just be shoved in some corner or some, and like another example, somebody who cooks all the time, and that's a big part of their passion and their life's purpose. And the way that, the house can be designed around the kitchen, that's not too uncommon, but you can take it a whole lot further. Or, a lot of times auxiliary spaces outside of the house that are used for certain purposes, for creativity, for art, for meditation, for spiritual practice, where, if we're not thinking of that as like, this is really key to supporting my mission, then it gets shoved in some corner or some extra guest bedroom or some, it doesn't even really get brought in.
Well, as you're even talking, we have some acreage on our property, and we have the back part of the property, right? And ever since and this house called us in, I mean, from me clicking on a link to us moving in was 60 days flat.
Wow.
And we were not even looking for a home for another one, right? Like, and this one is, we're in the heart of LA, we're in the Hollywood Hills, but we're in nature. We have deer walking through our backyard all the time. But I've been imagining some sort of ADU in the back, whether it's a pool house and we build a pool or whatever. And that may be part of it. But what I really just got is like, oh, that's meant to be our sanctuary. That's meant to be like our meditation place. Like,
yes,
held in the cup of that canyon.
Yep. I remember seeing that and seeing when we visited your property right after you got it, and that's what I saw. It was almost like a little temple. It was a sacred place.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing that it doesn't necessarily come through the normal process of just starting with the functional and the
because I've been thinking about it functionally, and I'm like, oh, that could be a pool house.
Right.
I was thinking about it, right? But in this conversation, it suddenly hit me like, oh, that's the sanctuary for the home.
Yes. And if you and Pete have your sanctuary, that's like your power place, like your extra ultimate power place up there on the hill that you make pilgrimage to.
Right.
And you're completely nurtured and supported in your true self. And then, like, how much more are you going to receive in terms of your vision and in terms of your intention and your flow and your embodiment in the world? It's like, it's just exponentially.
Yeah.
Or like potentially, it has the potential to really, really support you further. I mean, you're already doing it, but it's like, we can always like amp this up even more.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of one of the insights around flipping this pyramid basically and starting at the top. And you asked about the true home process. I won't go into too much detail, but just the 4 steps are clearing. So we clear and balance the energy.
Yep.
That also involves blessing, kind of empowering, and then visioning. And then the next one is co-creating. So we based on the clearing, a lot of times you can't even receive the vision until the space is clear, because there's too much else going on there. Once the space is clear and aligned, then the vision can come in for what the space is really meant to be. And then we start the third step is called co-creating. And that's where it's me and the client working together on, this sort of energetic mood board template for the home. Like, here are the colors that you were seeing in your vision. Here's what the elements of your power place that would be really helpful for you to bring into the design somehow. Here are the, there's so many aspects of it, but basically like we create this kind of design template for the home. And I call it co-creating because it's also co-creating with spirit, with vision. It's not just like, here's what the Sherwin-Williams color of the year is,
Right.
This looks great. It's like, what color are you craving, or, is really balancing for you right now? That's just one example. There are a lot of types of, things that we can bring in. So that's the co-creating stage. And then once the space is created, whether it's our firm doing design. A lot of times, I do this consulting work just for people and they implement it themselves,
Right.
because our services, it's a lot of work to actually redesign a home, and it's not for everybody. It's expensive, but even whether we're doing the implementation or not, they've got this template that they can bring to their builder, or their whoever is helping them,
Right.
or when they're shopping for furniture, or so the last step is, once it's all kind of pulled together, and then it's caretaking it. Like, what do you do? How do you steward this vision, this power place that you've created? How do you, and it's alive, that the caretaking is like, it's living in relationship with our land and with our home and with our stuff. And it's not like a fixed thing, like you design it and get it done. It's a practice, like tending a home and saying, oh, this used to feel really good in here, but this isn't really me anymore. And this isn't really, I'm ready to let this go.
Yep.
And what might I bring in its place? Or, it's a living relationship energetically, as well as just kind of basic energetic hygiene practices for people around their space, how to keep the energy clear and flowing rather than stagnating. So yeah.
Beautiful. Awesome. All right. Just a couple more questions before we wrap up. One, what have been like, when you started to think about this and see this vision and say, hey, I'm really meant to more consciously and visibly bring together everything I know about energy and land and your whole history with the design process, right? And I know, I'm sure that from the beginning there was parts of it woven in just because of who you are, right? But this was doing it very much on purpose and beginning to talk to people about it and sell it. I'm curious, like, what's the reaction been when you start talking about True Home, to especially just like your potential design customers, people in the design world, somebody you meet in the airport? Like, what's been the feedback? What's been the reaction?
Very positive, I would say, to say the least. Like, I find that so many people, not everyone, of course, but so many people really get it and want this. Like, understand, like you said, the idea of heaven on earth. Understand the idea of having a home that is their power place, that really nurtures them and reflects them and empowers them. People get that, and I think. Not everybody is on board for all, the entire process. Some of our clients just want the energy clearing and blessing, and that alone is all, that's a wonderful thing
Yeah.
that so many of us, there's just a huge need for that in the world. And just bringing that, into the conversation within the design world is, there aren't very many people doing it. There's only a couple, and it's addressed sort of peripherally or superficially. And so, in general, but saying this is actually the first most important thing that we need to do with any project. That's kind of a radical statement, and that doesn't mean you have to be a shaman, or you have to know energy, or you'd have to, be a meditator or a monk or any of that, or even believe in anything spiritually. What I say for people is that at the very least, let's stop, let's pause, let's listen to what's here. Like, what is actually here before we go in with our design ideas and our bulldozers and our vision. Like, let's slow it down a little bit. Just slow it down a little bit and listen. Be on the land. That was in that first step of clearing. We walk the land, and so many people, it's amazing, own beautiful land and have never actually walked the entire perimeter of their land and stopped and looked at everything along the way and fallen in love with their land.
Yeah.
And so there's a practice for that. But at the very least, just listening to what's here what's wanted here? Do I feel welcome here? Do I, or do I have permission to be here? And even if people don't believe in that, just stop and listen. Stop and listen to what's there. If something doesn't feel balanced, call in a professional. There are energy workers, feng shui people, shamanic energy clearers. I'm happy to refer people. It's like there are tons of practitioners out there who can come in, and they don't have to be on site. This energy is everywhere. Energy can be worked with remotely. A lot of the work I do at times is remote.
Yeah.
And so just getting a full energetic scan and clearing and rebalancing and blessing of a land or a home at the beginning of a project or when moving into a new home, that can have ripples through the whole process for everybody involved in such a positive way.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I feel like the design community needs to acknowledge, where people are open to it, is that energy is important. And really the essence of the energy work is intention. And if you stop and listen, and then also listen inwardly and go, what is my intention here?
Yeah.
What is our intention as a family or as a couple? What are we really trying to do here? And even spending, it only has to be a few minutes, but like how amazing if you spent a half an hour journaling on that, or an hour writing and discussing or meditating on it together and saying, I really feel like this house is about this. It's really about this to us. And, coming up with this shared vision, that will make a huge difference for your architect, your builder, your designer, your landscaper. Like if you come into the process with some intention, rather than just like, well, what do you think we should do with this? Or what do you, or, the realtors say we need a butler's pantry and we need a, a walk-in closet. And, it's like thinking, all rationally rather than from the heart about what do we want to create here? And then ideally, for those who are open to it, how can this home give back? How can it be, rather than a symbol of extraction, consumption from the earth, sucking in resources, how can it be something that gives back to the earth, that actually makes the earth better, that makes that property better, makes the neighborhood better, makes the community better, makes the earth. It's so possible. It's actually not that hard right now. You just have to have the intention to do that. And then there are certain design decisions that you make along the way. Like, oh yeah, we really should do geothermal. It's $20,000 more. That, that's a lot. But in the overall cost of this home, for us to know that this is completely, net zero energy. Wow, cool. Like we're not extracting. And then what do we give back to the animals, the plants, the neighborhood? How do we create some permeability? Is there a way that we can host and that we can do something for the community? We can throw a party. We can,
I love that. Pete and I just finished a big landscaping project, and we did all Southern California native plants because there are certain plants that certain birds only eat from that plant. Right. And it's been amazing. It's just been 2 months, and seeing the biodiversity of the different, we've never seen that bird here. We've never seen that here. And it's like, well, give them food, they'll come.
Exactly. That's such a perfect example. Like for Joe and I, with our backyard and our gardens, we wanted it to be xeric, because we don't want to overwater it. But we thought, well, we worked with our landscaper. What's native here? What grows naturally? Well, all these incredible Colorado wildflowers, and okay, well, let's plant those. And what's good for the bees, and what's good for the hummingbirds. And so by thinking in that way, it's not that hard, but not a lot of us are like reminded to think that way. And as soon as we make that intention to kind of create something that gives back, we receive 10 times more. Because we get to walk out into these gardens and they're just abundant, and the bees and the birds and the butterflies, and it's just, everybody goes, oh wow, your yard, who did, like, how did you do that? And it's just like nature, like working with nature rather than like, against.
Yeah. All right. Couple more questions and we're going to wrap up. One, just because I know when people often get like what at first might feel like a harebrained idea. Wow, I'm supposed to do this. I meant to do this project. I'm okay. I was woken up in the middle of the night, or before I went to bed, with the spirit saying, "Where is my song?" And I'm supposed to bring what I learned from that into interior design, right? And it makes sense maybe to you, but gosh, will this make sense to anybody else? And especially when we do that in business, there's often concerns of the financial implications of it, without needing to share any of your numbers or anything. But I'm just curious if you could share, like, what's been the financial implications of bringing True Home into or as part of a service in your design firm?
It's been significant. I would say, I mean, like over the last few years, our business just kind of continues to double, really. I mean, it's just like we're on a very significant growth arc, while at the same time I feel like we're doing better work.
Uh-huh.
We're doing deeper, more meaningful, purposeful work. Our clients are happier. Not always. I mean, there's challenges with growth, and we're learning how to be business owners, and we don't necessarily actually want to just keep growing indefinitely. But what we do want is to get the message out,
Yeah.
that this is something that can apply to anybody, anywhere. It's not just for wealthy people who can afford, interior design services. Anybody can learn how to tune into the energy of their home, clear it, balance it, or get support with doing that, come up with a vision that's really resonant for them, bring that into their space, and start noticing the feelings of that, and having this intention of taking care of it and taking care of the land and feeling more connected to nature. Like, that's something we can all do no matter where we live, and it can just amplify so many things in our lives. So I would say for Joe and I, it's not just the growth that we've experienced in our business, which is wonderful, but it's the personal growth, the feeling of living in alignment and in service, and that's where we still feel like, oh my gosh, there's so far that we want to go, that we want to share, that we want to create.
Yeah.
We want to be able to make this more available to people in different ways, and so that's exciting to us.
Tell me this last question.
Yeah.
What do you see as the higher purpose of the design industry, and what function would you like it to see it play in society? Like, even thinking 50 years out, the role of interior design in society is what?
It really is heaven on earth.
Hmm.
It is. I mean, that we have the ability to create that together and to experience it in our daily lives. I mean, and it doesn't have to be just for certain people. Everybody knows what that feels like, even if they can't think of, something in this. I actually think probably everybody can think to some experience in this life of that, but even they can envision it and can find ways to try to work towards that. So I think that design, I mean, it has such power to impact our daily lives and the way that we see ourselves and our communities, and if it starts with intention, if we as designers really start with clarifying our intention rather than just rushing ahead with the business side of it and the creative drive and the success or the accolades or the whatever it is, but if we start with the intention of, like, how do I help create heaven on earth through my work, through my design, that really is that's the potential of the design industry. Like, we really can create a sustainable world if and it's gonna take the design industry getting on board, because we're such a huge portion of the consumption. So yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Matthew Tenzin. So we can find more about you where?
So the website is truehomedesign.com. That's
Great.
where you can really dive into the True Home process and the work and learn more about that. Our interior design website is joemaguiredesign.com, and that really focuses on the full service interior design, and we offer the True Home process to clients within that business.
Beautiful. So people can do True Home on its own. They can do it along with a design service and Joe McGuire. I also noticed on the bottom of truehomedesign.com, there's free meditation and design tips to get started in some of this. So that's a great resource for people to take advantage of. Matthew, this has been, I love you. I love your work in the world. I'm so grateful for your presence in my life and in this world. And thank you for sharing your heart and your vision with us today.
Jeffrey, likewise, I'm so grateful and honored to get to be here and talk with you about this, and so grateful for you and your work and the inspiration and impact that you had in helping me really clarify this and get this out there.
Beautiful. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. And thanks again, everybody, for being here. As always, this is designed to help you take the visions you see and bring them into this world so we can create a new story for humanity together. Hey there, thanks so much for listening in. If this conversation was powerful, if it stirred your soul or inspired your journey, then be sure to share it with a friend. Just copy and paste the link wherever you're listening to this podcast and text that link right now to a friend that you think would be inspired by this episode. And if this is your first time here, be sure to click that subscribe button over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and I'd really appreciate it if you'd leave a rating and review so I can get to know you and your thoughts better. To learn more about the work I do with emerging and established paradigm changers, go to thecourageousmessenger.com. That's all for today. Thanks so much for being here, and I hope to see you in the next episode.